Slur's gang functions as the opposition to the Order in Sakamoto Days, so their role in the story requires them to be strong. Each member also happens to have a unique quirk to their fighting style, and so, after my video ranking all the Order members from weakest to strongest, I figured it'd only be fair to do the same with Slur's gang. For this video, I'll be covering the 9 definitive members of Slur's gang, along with Akira, since she's currently chilling with them. I'll also be covering characters that are currently dead, but I won't cover the 2 unknown orphans. So without further delay, the list of characters I'll be ranking is as follows: Gaku, Uzuki, Kanaguri, Kumomi, Haruma, Club Jam, Carolina Reaper, Kashima, Akira, and Uda. Coming in at number 10 is Uda. Introduced in Chapter 51, Uda has really limited screen time, only lasting until Chapter 54. During his short run, he just doesn't really show anything particularly impressive. He takes out JAA fodder pretty easily, speed blitzed a relatively weak Shin, and took a single kick from a fat Sakamoto, but that's really about it. He got cooked by Takamura, although that's not really an anti-feat, and died shortly after, so the low number of feats he has, combined with their relatively low status, leaves him at 10th. At number 9, we have Kashima. Kashima is definitely not an unimpressive fighter, but he kinda gets overshadowed by the rest of Slur's gang. His one real fight is against Sakamoto, and he was getting cooked even before Sakamoto went into his skinny form. Sakamoto only really had the lock-in since Kashima is essentially immortal, with Kashima's main benefit being his heavily modified body, which allows him to take punishment and recover from it in a way that no other character can. Akira literally cuts his arm to pieces, but Kashima is still able to reattach it, and he has several weapons ranging from machine guns to lasers just built into his body. Overall, while his body can definitely pose a problem for some of the weaker characters in the verse, the stronger characters on this list all have enough AP to put Kashima down, and they're also just more skilled as a fighter, leaving Kashima at 9th. For our 8th member, we have Akira. Despite being this low on the list, Akira legitimately has some really impressive feats. Far more experienced fighters such as Sakamoto, Satada, and Kashima have all commented on her speed when she hones in on a killing path, and she even has the feat of blocking a punch from skinny Sakamoto. She flat out speed blitzes Shin, Seba, and Amane all at the same time, and Shin even comments that if he didn't have his future sight, she would have just taken him out. The only reason I have her this low on the list is mostly due to her lack of experience compared to everyone else above her. I also think that, despite being above Kashima, she'd still lose to him in a fight, mostly due to Kashima's semi-immortality. Akira's definitely the better fighter, it's just that Kashima's hacks let him get away with so much, and I don't think she'd be able to reliably put him down, while Kashima has a plethora of weapons to take her down with. But since it's just sort of a bad matchup, I'd still consider Akira to be stronger, so she's 8th. At number 7, we have the certified freak Club Jam. Club Jam only participates in one fight, so it's a little hard to scale him, but from what we do see, I think it's fair to say that he's somewhat relative to Shania. Shin says that Club Jam gives the same vibe as Shania, but considering the fact that Shania was in a 4v1, I think it's a little hyperbolic. Club Jam's whole hypnosis ability is just a little inconsistent, with it working on some and not working on others, and there's never an explanation given for why that is. That being said, even if Club Jam can't hypnotize others with consistency, he can hypnotize himself to grant himself a temporary stat boost, and his base speed alone was enough to blitz Seba, but his durability and AP are kind of lacking. Amane was able to easily cut off his hand, and one stab from Seba and 2 amped punches from Shin were enough to just put him down for good. With all that in mind, it leaves Club Jam at 7th. Following up Club Jam is his brother, Carolina Reaper. Much like his brother, Carolina Reaper only participates in one fight, so it's hard to scale him. But there are a few things that make me say that he's probably better than Club Jam. For starters, he's able to take a lot more of Amane's slashes even while off guard, so his durability is likely higher. He's also taken a couple swings from Shishiba as well without dying, so that's pretty good. His speed, though, is not anything impressive, considering Amane just running around was enough to avoid the brunt of Carolina Reaper's flames, and the potency of the flames themselves isn't really all that high either. Carolina Reaper's real AP comes from his gas saber, which easily cut through Amane's 4-second staff and did some massive damage to Shishiba in a single swipe. So overall, while Carolina Reaper has some relatively impressive feats, the fact that he just couldn't instantly put down Amane, even if he was aiming to torture him, leads me to say that the highest he goes is 6th. At number 5 is Haruma. Haruma actually has some pretty impressive showings and statements that would lead me to put him a little higher, were it not for his fighting style. Shishiba states that Haruma has strength that's relative to Hyo, and he's been shown to absolutely dominate Shin in pretty much every physical aspect, outputting more power, being faster, tanking several of his amped punches, and even at one point catching his fist and breaking his fingers. The only reason I have him in the middle of the list is because of his sports-based fighting style, which Kumomi has stated to make him just a weaker fighter than if he was just to fight normally. Haruma himself even says this when he claims that he plays by sports rules to make his fights fair. And as of recently, he's shown some pretty good synergy with Gaku as the two fight Takamura, with Haruma actually just throwing hands instead of playing sports. However, I don't think this makes him equal to Gaku since Haruma himself says that he's not as good as martial arts. Just looking at Haruma as a whole, while he's definitely strong, his fighting style just sticks out as a glaring weakness when putting up against people that are higher up on the list, so he's 5th. For our 4th member, we have Kumomi. Thankfully, Kumomi has been in more than one fight, so there's actually a lot more to work with. We know that she would be physically weaker than Haruma since she was outclassed in the strength department by Hyo, but her electromagnet and overall fighting style make all the difference. She's taken several blows from both Hyo and Shishiba, and while she definitely took damage, none of these attacks were enough to permanently take her out of the fight. Additionally, she was actually capable of keeping up with Hyo in straight hand-to-hand combat, albeit this was after Hyo lost an eye. And of course, her electromagnet is incredibly versatile, able to grant her a weapon so long as something magnetic just exists around her, and her coil gun is the most powerful attack we've seen her use since it had enough power to straight up go through Hyo. The strength of the magnet itself is also really high, being able to do so much as pull a truck through a wall and use its crane to slam Shishiba. All in all, Kumomi is just a really well-rounded fighter without the same limitations as the previous people on the list, which is why she's 4th. Starting off our top 3 is Kanaguri. Despite being ranked a lot lower in the order members video, I think Kanaguri does way better here. He's shown some insane durability fighting Satada and immediately throwing hands with a fat and skinny Sakamoto, all to take next to 0 damage. He's able to catch the same skinny Sakamoto off guard and land a solid slash on him as well. Kanaguri's performance does kind of depend on his passion for filmmaking, so if someone is able to get rid of his filmmaking materials, he does get substantially weaker. But on the flip side, we've seen that if he actually locks in with making movies, he can get a massive stat amp to the point of blitzing Fat Sakamoto repeatedly. Additionally, we've seen that it's actually really hard to disarm Kanaguri, as seen when Satada couldn't even make his arm budge while trying some Aikido moves on him. Given that, I think someone like Kumomi wouldn't really be able to disarm him with her electromagnet, and even if she could, it might just make Kanaguri mad. With that, I also just think that Kanaguri is simply skilled enough to take down everyone below him in a fight. Our runner-up on this list is Gaku, and I don't think there's a lot of room for debate. The man has gone toe-to-toe with the 2nd strongest order member and gave him a really tough fight, and recently Gaku has practically returned from the dead to fight Takamura. His AP is insane, with his blows doing visible damage to Nagumo, someone who has a surprisingly high level of durability, and his general skill in martial arts is easily top 5 considering the fact that not only did Nagumo didn't think he could just beat Gaku in a straight up fistfight, but his few showings had Sakamoto weary as well. He's got crazy endurance and pain tolerance, to the point where he literally gets stronger after suffering a lethal stab from Nagumo's invisible blade, and is relatively unfazed each time he gets hurt, even if getting hurt means he lost a limb. Not to mention, he's actually the first person we've seen to actually do damage to Takamura, even if it came at the cost of him being taken out of the fight. Overall, Gaku is just an absolute powerhouse with super high AP, speed, endurance, and durability, making him second only to his boss. At number 1, we have Uzuki himself. After chapter 167, I don't think there's much room for debate. Sure, he was getting bodied by Takamura, but so were the other 4 dudes that were there with him. Once Uzuki locked in and copied Takamura's personality, it was over. Uzuki literally speed blitzes and one-shots Takamura with his own sword, and not to mention his Rion personality, which we know from the flashback arc to be incredibly skilled with weapons, and also has the feat of speed blitzing and taking down Kanaguri. Even just based Uzuki is really impressive, with his whip chain offering a lot of versatility, and his ability to completely erase his bloodlust being great for getting the drop on his opponents. Additionally, Uzuki has some pretty good endurance as well, considering his entire fight with Takamura was done with a hole in his lung after Nagumo stabbed him. Overall, after recent events in this arc, Uzuki has really shown himself to be the strongest member of his own gang. Honestly, compared to the order video, this list was way easier to make. But despite me saying that, I could see some argument for Kanaguri possibly beating Gaku, so if that's you, please tell me why I'm wrong in the comments.